Let's be honest, when you hear Bitcoin mining, you probably picture a giant smoke-belching factory, right? Some massive planet-sized carbon footprint. It's an idea that's pretty much become accepted as fact. But is it true? In this explainer, we're going to dig into that and see if there's, a bit more to the story.
And yeah, this is where it all starts, right? We've all seen these headlines. They're super dramatic, totally shocking, and they paint this really clear picture of Bitcoin as this out-of-control energy glutton. And that image, it has really, really stuck.
But is it the whole story? Is that headline really the beginning and the end of the conversation, or is it just a really effective, super simplified soundbite that misses all the important details? That's the big question we're diving into today.
Okay, so first things first. Let's just get one thing straight right out of the gate. Bitcoin absolutely uses a lot of energy. I mean, there's just no denying that. The network's consumption is huge, and that simple fact is pretty much the foundation of this entire debate.
But here's where we need to make a really critical distinction. The real conversation, it isn't just about how much energy is being used. That's only scratching the surface.
So, the common view is super simple, right? More energy equals more harm to the planet. But that's not quite right. Think about your fridge at home. It's running 24/7. Is it an environmental monster? Well, it totally depends on where its electricity is coming from, doesn't it? So you see, what really matters isn't the amount of energy, but the source of that energy.
And this right here, this brings us to the absolute core of the issue. To really get Bitcoin's environmental impact, we have to look at where its power is actually coming from. And trust me, the answer might surprise you.
Okay, so this is where the story gets really, really interesting. A bunch of studies show that a huge chunk of Bitcoin's energy mix, it's not what you'd think. A large portion comes from renewables and, get this, from energy that would otherwise be completely wasted. You have to understand, miners are basically opportunists. They're driven by one thing, finding the absolute cheapest power on the planet. And guess what? A lot of the time, that cheap power is either green or what we call stranded energy.
And this isn't just some theory, okay? We're talking about real-world operations setting up right next to hydroelectric dams that produce way more power than the local grid can even handle. Or miners literally capturing the natural gas from oil fields that would otherwise just be burned off into the atmosphere for nothing. They're even setting up shot-near volcanoes to tap into geothermal energy. This is power that, in many cases, has no other buyer. This crazy hunt for cheap, unwanted energy, it leads us to another really common myth that we need to bust.
You've probably heard this one. The myth is that Bitcoin mining is taking power away from regular people. You know that they're plugging into your neighborhood grid and sucking up electricity that should be going to homes, schools, and hospitals. But again, the reality is way more complicated than that.
See, most of the big mining operations don't happen where you and I live. They happen in these very specific remote parts of the world that have massive energy surpluses. Think about it. Powerful dams on rivers in the middle of nowhere with no cities nearby. Or these huge windy plains in Texas where the turbines spin all night, generating way more power than anyone can actually use. This electricity is literally stranded. You can't transport it effectively to where the people are.
So this creates this weird, kind of counterintuitive benefit. Miners become this really unique kind of customer. They're like a flexible mobile buyer of last resort. They can set up anywhere, soak up all that excess power when it's there, and this part is crucial, they can power down instantly when the grid needs that energy for everyone else. So in a way, they can actually help balance and stabilize these really fragile power grids. Pretty wild, right?
Okay, so where does this leave us? Does all this mean Bitcoin is perfectly green? No, absolutely not. Let's be totally fair here. The research is clear that there are still plenty of mining operations that do rely on fossil fuels, and those are 100% a problem that needs to be solved. But that simple narrative, the one where Bitcoin is this unstoppable climate villain, that's a myth. It just doesn't hold up. It's kind of like blaming the entire internet for deforestation just because servers need electricity. It completely misses the bigger, more nuanced picture.
So turns out, we might have been asking the wrong question this whole time. The conversation shouldn't just be, does Bitcoin use energy with a simple yes or no? I mean, of course it does. Everything does.
The real, and way more productive, conversation is this. How can we push it toward greener energy even faster? How do we create incentives for the good behavior and, penalize the bad? That's a question that actually leads to real solutions. And that leads us to a final plot twist, and it's one that most people just never see coming. Far from being the enemy of the green movement, Bitcoin mining could actually become a surprising ally in the whole renewable revolution.
Just think about it for a second. What's one of the biggest problems for building a new solar or wind farm out in the middle of nowhere? It's the economic risk, right? Will you be able to find a buyer for all that power? Well, Bitcoin miners offer a solution. They can be a guaranteed, location-independent buyer for that stranded energy. And that could make a whole lot more renewable projects financially possible from day one.
So we're left with this, aren't we? Is Bitcoin boiling the oceans like the headlines scream? Or could it, paradoxically, be helping to build a greener future? The truth, as we've seen, it's not a simple soundbite. It's complicated, it's full of nuance, and it's a whole lot greener than you've probably been led to believe.